Welcome to Sleepy Science. Tonight, you are going to meet animals the Earth has already forgotten, creatures that lived, slept, and moved in silence. Many of them never saw danger. Many never knew they were disappearing. Here is something strange. Almost every animal that has ever lived is extinct. Their worlds ended, but nothing felt different to them. The sun still rose, the wind still moved. Then one day they were gone. These are not scary stories. These are quiet facts, slow lives, calm endings. If you listen long enough, it starts to feel unreal, like falling asleep inside another time. If you want more stories like this, subscribe to Sleepy Science. Now let's go back to the beginning. Before humans had names, before memory had shape, the Earth was already busy with life. Not loud life, not fast life, just quiet movement underwater. Slow bodies sliding over soft ground, tiny mouths opening and closing. Simple beings doing simple things again and again. Most animals that ever lived are already gone. Not rare ones, not special ones, almost all of them. They lived full lives on a planet that did not know humans yet. No eyes watched them. No stories followed them. They were born, they survived for a time, and then they disappeared without leaving a sound. The first oceans were warm and shallow. The water was thick with minerals. Light reached the bottom easily. Life did not need to hide. There were no strong hunters yet, no fast chases. Many animals had no shells. No bones, no teeth, just soft bodies shaped by water and time. Some of these creatures never had faces as we know them. No eyes, no ears, just cells working together. They sensed light and dark, warm and cold. That was enough. They floated or rested on the sea floor. Movement was slow, but there was no reason to hurry. Imagine an ocean where nothing fears being eaten, where life spreads calmly, covering the ground like a living blanket. Animals did not compete much. Food was everywhere. Space was open. Time felt endless. Many of these animals will never have names. Their bodies were too soft to become fossils. When they died, they simply melted back into the water. No bones left behind. No shapes pressed into stone. They existed and then they were erased completely. That is hard to picture. A whole world of life with no proof left, only absence. Some early animals did leave faint marks, thin lines in stone, soft impressions, shapes that look like shadows frozen in rock. Scientists find them and pause. They try to understand what moved there, how it lived, why it mattered. These creatures did not know they were early. They were not primitive to themselves. They were complete. They ate, they reacted. They survived long enough to reproduce. That is all life ever tries to do. Time moved slowly then. Millions of years passed like calm waves. Species came and went without notice. One shape replaced another, slight changes, longer bodies, wider mouths, better ways to sense the water around them. Some animals learned to stay still. Others learned to glide. A few began to dig into the sea floor and hide halfway inside it, not out of fear but comfort. The ground was cool and steady. The oceans grew deeper, darker. Life followed the light down as far as it could go. Where light ended, other creatures waited. Animals that did not need to see. Animals that felt vibrations instead. Extinction had already begun even then, not as a disaster, just as part of the rhythm. When the water chemistry changed, some creatures could not adjust. When oxygen levels dropped, others faded out. No pain we can see, just fewer births, slower growth, then nothing. What is strange is how normal it all was. No endings felt dramatic. No final moments were marked. One generation lived. The next did not appear. That was all. New animals took their place. Slightly different shapes, slightly better fits for the new world. Life did not mourn. It continued. These early oceans were full of experiments, bodies shaped like discs, bodies shaped like leaves, creatures that looked like stitched fabric or soft pillows, designs that evolution never tried again. Some lived for only a short time in the story of Earth, a few million years, then gone. Others lasted longer, spreading across wide seas. They felt stable, permanent, but nothing was. The idea of forever did not exist. Only now. As the ocean slowly changed, life responded without knowing it was responding. Tiny changes added up. What once worked stopped working. What once thrived became rare, then invisible. When we look back now, it feels mysterious. Like opening a book with most pages missing. We see gaps, long gaps, entire chapters gone. And yet this was the foundation of everything that came later. Fish, reptiles, mammals, even us, built on layers of forgotten lives. Every breath you take is possible because of animals that lived and died before air was even breathable. They changed the planet just by existing, just by being alive. They never knew that. They never needed to. This is what makes extinct animals feel quiet instead of tragic. They were not waiting for the future. They were fully present in their own time. When the world shifted, they did not resist. They simply stopped. The earth did not slow down. Oceans kept moving. Tides kept rising. New life filled the empty spaces, always has, always will. As you think about these unknown creatures, imagine how many lives passed without stress, without fear, without awareness of endings. That calm is still part of the planet. It exists beneath the noise. And as we move forward through time, deeper into the story of extinct animals, remember this. The beginning was not chaos. It was quiet, slow, full of life that did not know it would ever be missed. For a long time, life on Earth did not move much. It stayed still or floated gently, but then something new happened. Some animals began to crawl. Others began to glide across the ocean floor. These were the first animals that truly moved with purpose. They were not fast. Speed did not matter yet. The world had no hunters waiting in shadows. There was no reason to run. Movement was slow, smooth, and careful, like the ocean itself was guiding them. These animals were soft. No bones. No shells. Their bodies bent easily with the water. If you touched them, your fingers would pass through gentle tissue, not hard edges. They were shaped like discs, ribbons, or flattened ovals, simple but complete. They did not see danger because danger did not exist. There were no sharp teeth, no claws, no eyes watching from a distance. Life was not a race. It was a slow balance. Some of these animals rested on the sea floor like living shadows. Others slid quietly, leaving faint lines behind them. These lines are some of the oldest signs of animal movement ever found. Thin paths pressed into ancient mud, proof that something passed through. These early movers did not hunt. They absorbed food from the water or gathered tiny particles from the ground. Eating was easy. The ocean provided without struggle. Energy was not wasted. Their bodies were designed for calm living, wide surfaces to absorb nutrients, gentle rhythms that matched the tides. They followed the flow instead of fighting it. Imagine an ocean where nothing hides, where life spreads openly, where being seen is not a risk. That was the world they knew. Time felt different then. Days passed without urgency. Generations lived and died without change. These animals looked the same for millions of years. There was no need to improve. Some lived in shallow waters where sunlight reached the bottom. Others stayed deeper, where light faded but peace remained. Temperature stayed steady. The ocean protected them from extremes. Because they were soft, most of them left no fossils. Their bodies vanished completely when they died. What we know comes from rare moments when mud hardened quickly around them. A gentle outline, a faint shape, enough to show they once existed. These animals did not think. They did not plan. They reacted. That was enough. When water shifted, they adjusted. When food arrived, they fed. Life was simple but not empty. The strange thing is how long this peaceful state lasted. Tens of millions of years passed with no arms race, no stronger jaws, no sharper senses. The planet rested in a calm phase of life. Then small changes began. Oxygen levels slowly rose, bodies could grow larger, movement could become more complex. Some animals started to sense others nearby. Touch became more important. Still, fear had not arrived. There was no reason to attack, no reason to defend. Life existed side by side, layered across the sea floor like soft fabric. Some animals began to move in gentle patterns, circles, loops, repeated paths, not searching for prey, just responding to their surroundings. It is hard to imagine a world without fear because fear shapes everything we know. But these animals lived before that feeling had meaning. Their bodies never learned tension. When they died, there was no last moment of panic, no chase, no injury, just a slowing, then stillness. As the environment shifted over time, some of these early movers could not adjust. Changes were small but steady. Temperature shifts, chemical changes in the water, tiny differences that added up. One by one, species faded away. No disaster marked their end. No sudden silence, just absence. Fewer traces, then none. New animals took their place, slightly firmer bodies, better movement control, more awareness. Life was preparing for a new phase. The calm world was not broken. It was simply replaced. These oldest moving animals did not fail. They lived exactly as long as the planet allowed them to. They shaped the future without knowing it. Every animal that came later inherited something from them. The idea of movement, the idea of choice, the idea of responding to the world. As you think about them, imagine moving without fear. Imagine existing without pressure, just responding to gentle changes. That was life once. And as time continued, that peace would slowly change. Not suddenly, not violently, but enough that the next creatures would begin to feel something new, awareness. And with awareness, the story would move forward. After the first soft animals learned how to move, the ocean slowly filled with something new. Small bodies with shape, clear edges, hard parts for the first time. These animals were trilobites, and for a very long time they felt like they belonged everywhere. Trilobites lived on the ocean floor. They crawled slowly over sand and mud, using many tiny legs that moved together in smooth waves. Their movement was calm and steady, never rushed. They did not need to hurry because the world still felt safe. Their bodies were divided into sections, like plates joined in a line. This made them flexible and strong at the same time. If danger ever appeared, some of them could curl into a tight ball, hiding their soft parts inside hard armor. It was a simple idea, but it worked. They had eyes made from stone-like material, clear lenses built into their heads. These eyes could see light and movement but not detail, enough to notice changes, enough to stay aware, not enough to create fear. Trilobites did not hunt large prey. Most of them fed on small bits of food in the sand. Dead plants, tiny animals, anything easy to gather. They moved forward slowly, cleaning the ocean floor as they went. Because food was everywhere, trilobites spread everywhere too. Shallow seas, deep waters, warm areas, cooler places. Wherever there was ground, trilobites appeared. They became one of the most successful animals the planet had ever seen. They came in many shapes. Some were flat and wide, others were narrow and long. Some had smooth edges, others had small spikes. Each shape matched a different way of living, but all followed the same calm design. What made trilobites special was not strength or speed, it was balance. Their bodies worked perfectly with the world around them. For millions of years, they barely changed. There was no need. They survived small climate changes, rising and falling sea levels, shifting continents. Other animals came and went, but trilobites stayed. Generation after generation lived normal, quiet lives. They did not know how long they had already existed. They did not know they were ancient. They only knew the sea floor beneath them and the gentle light above. Some trilobites lived alone. Others gathered in groups, moving together in lines across the ocean floor. Scientists have found trails where hundreds moved in the same direction, not running, just traveling together. At times, trilobites would shed their outer shells as they grew. These empty shells sank to the ground, adding to the layers of the sea floor. That is why we find so many fossils today, proof of a life that felt steady and secure. Predators slowly began to appear, but trilobites adapted. Their armor thickened. Their eyes improved. Some learned to bury themselves in the sand. Others swam for short moments, then settled again. Each challenge was met with calm change. Nothing felt urgent yet. For a very long time, trilobites survived almost everything the planet sent their way. They lived through events that erased many other animals. They endured while the world reshaped itself again and again. Their success made them feel permanent, but permanence does not exist in nature. Slowly, very slowly, the oceans continued to change. New predators became faster and smarter. Food sources shifted. Oxygen levels changed the balance of life. Trilobites began to struggle, but not all at once. Some species vanished while others remained. Their numbers thinned quietly. No single moment marked the beginning of the end. They continued living normal lives while their world moved past them. The last trilobite still crawled across the sea floor, still fed the same way, still followed the same patterns. Nothing felt wrong to them. The water still moved. The sand still held food. Then, eventually, they were gone. Not wiped out in a day. Not erased by one event. Just fewer, then fewer again, until no new shells were left behind. After nearly 300 million years, the trilobites disappeared completely. The oceans did not pause. Other animals filled the space they left. New shapes, new movements. Life continued without noticing what had ended. Today, trilobites exist only as stone, perfect outlines pressed into rock, silent reminders of a time when the world felt stable. When you look at a trilobite fossil, you are not seeing a failure. You are seeing success on a scale humans rarely understand. A life form that thrived longer than almost anything else. They survived almost everything, until they didn't, and that quiet ending is what makes them unforgettable. After trilobites had filled the oceans, life began to try strange new shapes. Creatures appeared that seem almost unreal today. Bodies that bent in ways no animal does now. Limbs that looked like tiny spikes, claws, or flexible ribbons. Eyes in places that seem impossible. These were the experiments of evolution, and most of them would never be repeated. Some of the first were animals like Anomalocaris. It looked like a cylinder with wide, flat sides, ending in a circular mouth lined with sharp plates. Two long arms stretched in front, waving slowly to grab food. Its body glided through the water, twisting and turning like a ribbon in a stream. To us, it might look like a monster, but in its time it was perfectly normal. Its movements were calm, purposeful, and measured. Anomalocaris was a hunter, but it did not rush. Its long arms allowed it to reach into small spaces for prey. It could open its circular mouth slowly, taking what it needed. It did not panic. The world was patient with it. It moved like the ocean itself had built it, in harmony with the gentle currents. Then there were animals like Hallucigenia. Its body was thin and soft, covered with spines that pointed upward. Tiny legs pushed it across the ocean floor, while spikes seemed to guard it from threats that barely existed. It looked as if someone had imagined it incorrectly and yet somehow it worked. Its shape made no sense to us now, but it survived for millions of years in calm, shallow waters. There were creatures shaped like fans, or like sticks with fringes, or even spheres that floated slowly through the water. Some had eyes all over their bodies, others had none at all. Some were soft like jelly, some had hard shells protecting only parts of their bodies. Evolution tried shapes that we cannot even imagine existing today. They were ideas tested once and then never repeated. These strange animals were not fast. They were not violent for the sake of being violent. Most of them ate slowly. Small particles, tiny animals, pieces of plants. They absorbed life from their surroundings. Their movements were smooth, deliberate, almost hypnotic if you could watch them for long enough. Some of these shapes existed for millions of years. Others vanished after only a short time in the story of Earth. No one saw their ends. No one noticed when they disappeared. The oceans simply changed around them and the animals faded. The calm of their lives is surprising. Imagine a creature so odd you cannot even recognize it as an animal, moving slowly across the sea floor, and yet nothing threatens it. Nothing pressures it. It is free to exist exactly as it is. Its form is strange, but the world allows it to survive. Evolution was patient. It tried 100 possibilities at once. Some animals became more recognizable to us today, leading toward fish and later reptiles. Others remained bizarre, one-off creations. They were alive long enough to leave traces in the stone, and then gone, leaving only mystery behind. Some strange animals had legs like antennas, waving to sense the world. Some had hard plates that seemed too heavy to move. Some floated like balloons, drifting slowly, feeding gently. Their shapes make modern scientists pause. We can see their bodies, but their lives are almost impossible to picture fully. And yet they were ordinary to themselves. They ate, moved, and reproduced without thought of being strange. They were part of a world that accepted anything that worked. The unusual was normal. The impossible was expected. The ocean floor was crowded with these experiments. Shapes overlapping, brushing past one another, each living quietly in its own rhythm. Nothing tried to change everything at once. Each species found its place. Some grazed on particles. Others filtered water. A few swam gently above the floor, searching for tiny prey. Eventually, the world began to change again. Sea levels shifted. Temperatures rose and fell. Oxygen in the water changed in small amounts that mattered greatly to soft bodies. The creatures that had thrived for millions of years could not all adjust. Some strange forms vanished first. Others lingered stubborn and slow until nothing remained. These losses were quiet. No roaring seas, no crashing events, just fewer sightings, fewer fossils, fewer traces. Then silence. What makes these animals fascinating is not just their shapes. It is the reminder that evolution does not follow logic from our perspective. It tries, it experiments, it tests endless possibilities. Most fail, some survive, and some succeed only briefly before vanishing. We look at hallucigenia and anomalocaris today and see something alien, but they were once ordinary. Life has always been full of experiments, some of which are lost to time. The strange shapes show us how flexible life can be, how patient it can be, how calm it can remain even in a changing world. And even as we study them now, we cannot fully understand what it was like to live in that calm, bizarre world. The lines in the stone, the fossils, the impressions, they hint at movement, feeding, survival, but not fear, not urgency. Just life being life. Evolution tried ideas that were never repeated. Every unusual body, every strange appendage, every alien eye was a possibility that existed for a time and then disappeared. They remind us that the past was wider than the present, stranger, softer, slower. The ocean was full of these creatures, shapes that make our imagination tingle, odd forms that float through memory like a half-forgotten dream. They lasted. They survived calm changes, small predators, and shifting currents. Until one day, even these perfect experiments were gone. The calm world of strange shapes left behind only traces in stone, whispers of a reality that no longer exists. And if we listen closely, we can imagine them moving slowly across the ocean floor, unaware of how temporary they truly were. They remind us that life is not always what it seems, that survival does not always mean permanence, that evolution is both patient and strange, and that some ideas, no matter how perfect in their time, are never tried again. The oceans once held endless possibilities. Creatures that seem impossible now were once normal. And as we move forward in time, even stranger stories will unfold, creatures bigger, slower, and calm, yet powerful in ways we are only beginning to understand. These shapes existed. They thrived. And then, quietly, they were gone. Their legacy is mystery. Their lesson is patience. Their life is almost beyond imagination. The ocean they moved through no longer holds them, but their forms remain in stone. A reminder that the world once allowed anything that worked, no matter how unreal it seemed. And just as they vanished, the next chapter of life was waiting, full of new shapes, new forms, and new experiments that would one day also disappear, leaving the calm, strange silence behind. After millions of years in the oceans, some animals began to try something new. They left the water. Step by step, they moved onto the land. The first steps were awkward. Limbs were weak, bodies not yet built for the hard ground. They waded slowly through mud, feeling the surface beneath them. Every movement was careful. Every step was uncertain. These early explorers were amphibians. They still needed water for their eggs, but their bodies were learning to handle air. Their skin was soft and moist, sensitive to sun and wind. They could breathe in air, but only slowly. A sudden exposure could dry them out. Life on land was a challenge. Reptiles came later. Their bodies were tougher. Their skins covered in scales, protecting them from sun and drying air. They moved differently. Limbs shifted under their bodies, carrying more weight. But at first, even they were slow and cautious. Every movement was tested. Imagine a shallow stream feeding into a muddy bank. Tiny creatures crawl from water to land. Their legs sink into soft mud. They lift their bodies, then pause. The world is different here. No water cushions every step. Gravity pulls down more sharply. The first steps were exploratory. Animals learned what could support them and what could not. Some sank into mud and had to pull themselves free. Some tested small stones as if measuring their strength. They were patient. There was no rush. There was no predator waiting yet. Life on land was strange. The air moved differently. Wind carried smells and sounds that were new. Animals raised their heads and paused to sense their surroundings. Some had tiny eyes for detecting movement. Others had simple sensors along their bodies. It was enough to survive. Food was new, too. Plants had already colonized the land, but not like forests today. Soft ferns and mosses covered the ground. Tiny insects or small worms hid under stones and leaves. Early land animals ate whatever they could find, slowly testing the new world. The first land animals did not compete aggressively. There was no rush for dominance. Every animal moved carefully, exploring. They pushed gently through plants, poked into soil, and felt every surface with their feet. They learned patterns of movement that would last for millions of years. Some were tiny, only a few centimeters long. Others were larger, awkward shapes that looked almost like fish with legs. Their tails helped balance them. Their bodies shifted slowly as they learned to move without the buoyancy of water. It was a quiet world. The oceans had ended somewhere behind them and the vast land stretched ahead. Each animal moved cautiously. The first footprints were shallow, sometimes fading quickly in mud. Later, these prints would become stone, recording the first evidence of life walking on land. The first explorers felt no fear yet. There were no predators waiting on land, no sharp teeth or claws. They only felt gravity and the strange resistance of the ground beneath them. They learned patience. They learned caution. Life on land was survival, but not through speed or violence. It was survival through care and observation. Some early amphibians returned to water often. They could not yet stay dry for long. Others stayed close to streams, crawling slowly across wet soil. They fed on tiny insects and worms, taking one bite at a time. Their movement was deliberate, no sudden leaps, no wasted energy. Reptiles began to develop stronger limbs and firmer bones. Their steps became more stable. Their tails helped steer. They could move farther from water without danger. The land slowly became more familiar. They explored small hills, shallow valleys, and rocky banks. Plants and animals on land were also evolving. Small forests of ferns grew. Moss and fungi spread across rocks and soil. Tiny insects scuttled across leaves. The first land animals had to learn these new movements. How to climb, how to hide, how to sense danger that might appear later. Every day was a lesson. Every step taught balance. Every pause taught observation. Life on land was fragile at first. One misstep could leave an animal exposed. One miscalculation could lead to death. But for now, the planet was patient. The land waited. Some early amphibians learned to hunt in shallow water and on mud. They could reach small insects, worms, or tiny fish that ventured near the edge. Their jaws were simple but effective. They learned to eat slowly, carefully, without drawing attention. The early world of land was also a place of quiet beauty. Morning mist lifted from shallow streams. Sunlight filtered through ferns. Water droplets hung from leaves. Animals moved like shadows over the damp soil. It was calm, peaceful, and full of slow learning. Not all animals succeeded. Some tried land briefly and returned to the oceans. Some were too weak to survive without constant moisture. Others were eaten by new predators that appeared later. Life was experimentation. Survival was testing. Extinction waited silently, but those who adapted changed everything. They paved the way for forests, deserts, and mountains filled with life. Their slow, careful movements laid the foundation for generations to come. They showed that life could exist outside water, that it could endure gravity and sun and wind. Over millions of years, amphibians and reptiles became more confident. Their steps grew stronger. Their senses sharpened. They learned to move with more purpose. But in the beginning, every step was unsure, every movement delicate, every day a quiet test of possibility. Think about that for a moment. The first animals that left water had no map, no guide, no experience. They simply moved slowly, step by step, learning the land as they went. Their lives were calm and cautious. Every moment was discovery. And that calm exploration, that slow first step onto solid ground, created the world we know today. Forests, deserts, mountains, and plains were all possible because animals once took tiny, careful steps into the unknown. They were patient, they were cautious, they were alive, and they changed the planet forever without knowing it. The first steps on land were slow and unsure, but those steps would echo through time, shaping every creature that walked, crawled, or ran on Earth after them. And as you imagine them moving across mud and ferns, you can feel the quiet courage of those first explorers, the calm curiosity that allowed life to leave water forever. After life began to explore land, a long age stretched across the Earth. This was a time before dinosaurs appeared, when the planet was already full of giants. Not the dinosaurs we know, but other creatures that were large, strange, and powerful in their own ways. These were synapsids and mammal-like reptiles. They ruled quietly, long before scales and claws became famous. Synapsids were different from the reptiles we see today. They had features closer to mammals. Some had fur or fur-like coverings. Some may have been warm-blooded, their bodies producing steady heat even when the sun was low or clouds covered the sky. This gave them a calm strength that allowed them to explore lands and hunt with quiet patience. These animals looked unusual to us now. Some had long, thick bodies with short legs. Others had upright stances, with tails dragging behind them. Some had long snouts filled with teeth shaped for tearing plants or small prey. Their skulls were strong, but their movements were slow, controlled, deliberate. Life was not yet chaotic. There were no massive predators chasing endlessly. Each animal had its space. Each species filled a role in a world that was warm, lush, and quiet. Forests of ferns stretched across the land. Shallow rivers curved between them. Mist rose from the soil in the mornings, hiding animals from view. Some synapsids were giants in their time. Creatures like Dimetrodon had long spines rising from their backs, forming sails that may have helped them catch sunlight or regulate their body heat. They looked fierce, but their movements were measured. They did not rush. They did not hunt for sport. They hunted to survive, but they did it with calm efficiency. Mammal-like reptiles were smaller but no less remarkable. They had teeth that allowed them to chew carefully. Some burrowed underground to rest. Others climbed low trees to reach plants or insects. Their senses were sharp, but alert rather than frantic. They felt the world around them without panic. The first warm-blooded beginnings changed life slowly. Animals could explore farther from water. They could hunt at night or in cooler weather. The land expanded as a place of possibility. Life was no longer limited by sun or cold. It moved with patience, testing the world in quiet ways. The forests and rivers of this time were alive but calm. Insects scuttled through the undergrowth. Early ferns and mosses swayed with the wind. Animals moved through the shadows, searching, feeding, resting. The world was warm but not hot. Gentle breezes moved across the plains. Every movement seemed measured, part of a slow rhythm. Some of the larger synapsids may have seemed like kings of the land. They were not fast, but they were stable. They could dominate their territories simply by being strong and enduring. Their prey moved slowly, feeding on ferns and soft plants. Everything existed in balance, without rush, without chaos. Even so, life was always changing. Seasons shifted. Water levels rose and fell. Some forests dried. Rivers shifted. Animals that could adapt continued. Those that could not slowly faded away. Extinction was present but quiet. It never shouted. It only whispered. Many species in this age would never be seen again. Their forms were unique. Limbs arranged in unusual ways. Skulls shaped differently than anything today. Some had spines, crests, or sails. Some had strong tails for balance. These designs were experiments. Evolution was trying ideas it may never repeat. And yet, for millions of years, these creatures thrived. They moved with purpose but not urgency. They hunted, rested, and reproduced. They felt the world around them and reacted calmly. They were alive in a way we rarely imagine today. The long age before dinosaurs shows us that giants existed before scales and claws became famous. Before teeth that tore flesh quickly became the norm. Before the massive creatures we picture in movies. These animals were giants in their own right, quietly shaping the land. Some were solitary. Others moved in small groups, traveling together to feed or rest. Footprints left in mud and sand became stone, marking the paths of creatures that will never exist again. These impressions show calm movement, not panic. They show animals testing their environment carefully. Over time, new forms of life began to appear. Some synapsids became smaller, some adapted to hunt faster prey. But the giants remained for long stretches, teaching the world that strength did not always need speed, that presence mattered more than aggression. Even when their era began to end, these animals did not fail in a dramatic moment. They faded slowly, changing climates, rising seas, shifting forests. Other creatures took over spaces they once dominated. The giant synapsids and mammal-like reptiles disappeared quietly, leaving behind their fossils as proof of a calm dominance that lasted far longer than most creatures today. The world they left behind was ready for something new. Dinosaurs would rise eventually, but they were not the first to rule. They inherited a land already shaped by patient, deliberate giants. Animals that moved slowly, fed calmly, and lived fully without fear. Looking back, it is strange to think of these creatures. They were neither monsters nor gentle pets. They were something in between, powerful, strange, calm, and entirely gone. Dinosaurs would steal the spotlight later, but in this long age, the first giants taught the land how to be alive, how to sustain life in warm forests, across rivers, and through calm valleys. They proved that patience and stability could dominate just as much as speed and aggression. Every footprint, every fossil, every bone left behind tells the same story. Dinosaurs were not the first giants. Life had already tested size, endurance, and calm power. These animals remind us that the world has always been full of creatures beyond imagination. And as the next ages approach, the quiet strength of these early giants would fade, making room for a new era of creatures that would capture attention and awe. Yet the memory of those patient rulers remains, buried deep in stone and imagination, waiting to be remembered. After the long age of early giants, the earth began to see something different. Dinosaurs appeared, but not the terrifying, roaring creatures that most people imagine. Many of them were gentle giants, animals that moved slowly across the land, eating plants and living in herds. They were large, yes, but their power was quiet, not violent. Some dinosaurs spent their days feeding on ferns, cycads, and soft plants. They had long necks to reach tall branches or wide mouths to graze low vegetation. Their steps were careful, measured. Each footfall pressed into the soft ground without rushing. They were built for endurance, not speed. These herbivores lived in groups, herds that moved together like a single organism. Parents and young stayed close. The old and weak were not left behind in panic but walked at their own pace. The herd provided safety, but it also created a rhythm. One animal moved, another followed. Paths were repeated slowly over time, leaving marks in mud that became stone. Life for these dinosaurs was long. Some lived decades. Their growth was steady. Their bodies adapted to the land without hurry. They could explore forests, rivers, and plains calmly. They did not need to dominate through aggression. Their size alone was enough to protect them. Imagine a herd of giant plant-eaters moving through a misty valley. Morning fog rises from the ground. Leaves hang heavy with dew. Dinosaurs lift their heads slowly to feed. One lowers its neck to nibble on low plants, another stretches high to reach branches. The rhythm is unbroken. No noise except the occasional rustle of leaves. Even in water, some dinosaurs moved carefully. Shallow rivers became paths to cross. They waded slowly, feeling the riverbed with strong, steady legs. Water supported their weight, but it was not a crutch. They could move across land with equal calm. Some of these gentle giants had armor, bony plates along their backs or tails tipped with small spikes. Not for hunting, not for killing, but for protection. These were animals aware of danger but not driven by fear. They lived with the quiet knowledge that strength comes from being steady and prepared. Young dinosaurs learned by following older members of the herd. They watched how the adults moved, how they fed, how they reacted to small disturbances like falling branches or distant noises. Learning was slow, deliberate, and careful. They were taught the rhythm of life. The world they lived in was warm and full of plants. Forests stretched across continents. Rivers meandered through valleys. Small creatures scuttled through undergrowth. Insects, small mammals, and early birds existed alongside these dinosaurs. But none of these smaller animals challenged the giants. The dinosaurs moved gently, almost ignoring them. Some dinosaurs could raise their heads high to see far across the land. They could sense approaching storms or distant movement. Yet they did not panic. Their awareness was calm, not urgent. Every decision was measured, step by step, moment by moment. Even when threatened, these herbivores did not rush blindly. They would move slowly toward safer areas, using their size and numbers as protection. The herd could circle around young or injured members. Each animal reacted with care, never in haste. Fossils show us that some of these gentle giants traveled long distances. They crossed plains, forests, and riverbanks. Their footprints, preserved in stone, reveal slow, steady patterns. Not the sudden, chaotic movement we imagine from predators. Just calm, careful walking over vast lands. Some dinosaurs had long tails to balance their bodies. Some had wide feet to distribute weight over soft ground. Evolution designed them for careful movement. Not for sudden attacks, not for fleeing constantly. Life was steady. Life was slow. Life was calm. Even their eating habits reflected peace. They chewed slowly, grinding leaves with teeth built for efficiency, not tearing flesh. They grazed quietly, leaving a mark on the land that would nourish future generations. They were builders as much as survivors. The young were protected. They learned patience, coordination, and rhythm. They moved in small groups within the herd. Older members taught them how to react to wind, rain, and shifting terrain. Every day was repetition, but not boring. It was survival practiced calmly. Some dinosaurs had to cross rivers or small streams. They did it carefully, testing the depth with each step. They waited for others, moving in line. Their lives were unhurried but full of purpose. Every movement mattered. Every moment counted without urgency. Even the largest giants, like the long-necked sauropods, were careful. They lifted their heads and tails slowly. They grazed for hours. They walked long distances without stress. The world provided what they needed if they moved with patience. Predators existed, but not all dinosaurs were preyed upon constantly. Large size, herd protection, and calm awareness were enough to survive for millions of years. Life did not have to be violent to endure. The calm strategy worked well. Some of these dinosaurs lived to see decades pass. Trees grew tall, forests thickened, rivers carved new paths, and still they continued. Gentle giants moving through the world with care, teaching us that power is not always measured by aggression. Their calm lives contrast with the image most people have of dinosaurs. They were not all monsters, not all fighting constantly. Many were herbivores, moving carefully, feeding slowly, living in rhythm with the land. They shaped the world as they lived, and when they died, they left a mark, not just in fossils, but in the paths they traveled, the plants they grazed, and the land they shaped. They were giants who lived without fear, without rush, and without chaos. Their story is a reminder that strength and calm can exist together. The world they moved through was vast and full of possibilities. Gentle giants, living quietly, shaping the earth in ways that only became clear long after they were gone. Not all giants were violent. Some ruled simply by moving carefully, living patiently, and feeding slowly. And in their calm steps, in their herd movements, and in their slow exploration of the land, they left a pattern that echoes through time. A story of patience, a story of survival without chaos, a story that teaches us that even the largest creatures can live with grace. These dinosaurs remind us that the world was not always loud or dangerous. Some giants moved gently, lived fully, and endured for millions of years. They shaped the land and the life around them. And though they are gone, their calm legacy remains, written in stone and imagination. The dinosaurs did not vanish in a single moment. There was no thunder or fire marking their end. The extinction that claimed them was quiet, slow, and unnoticeable to them. For millions of years they had roamed the earth, feeding, moving, and living in herds. Then the world began to change. The climate shifted gradually. Seasons grew more extreme. Some regions became drier, others colder. Forests that had once stretched endlessly began to shrink. Rivers dried in some places. Water became scarce in others. Plants that dinosaurs relied on for food changed or disappeared. The land itself no longer offered the abundance it once had. Herbivores were the first to feel this change. Gentle giants with long necks wandered over shrinking forests, searching for the same ferns and cycads that had fed them for decades. They walked slowly, carefully, but each day brought less to eat. The young grew weaker. Some herds broke apart. Others tried new areas, but the world had fewer safe paths. Predators suffered too, though differently. Large carnivores needed enough prey to survive. As herbivores grew scarce, hunting became harder. These hunters moved carefully, taking fewer risks, stalking smaller prey, and spending more energy than before. Every day was a test, but the danger was not sudden. It was patience wearing down bodies and hunger pressing steadily. Dinosaurs lived as they always had, unaware that the world was shifting. They continued to feed, protect their young, and travel in herds. Their steps remained careful, their movements deliberate, but life was no longer abundant. Every day, the land offered slightly less than before. Every season brought challenges they could not escape. This slow decline stretched over thousands of years. Some species adapted slightly. They grew smaller. They changed their feeding habits. They wandered farther than previous generations, searching for new food sources. Others failed to adapt. The world closed in quietly, leaving fewer and fewer survivors. The last days were calm in appearance. No great panic, no massive battles, only gradual fading. A herd wandered into a drying riverbed. A predator searched for food and found none. Young dinosaurs were born weaker. Old ones slowed and did not survive as long. Life was thinning, almost imperceptibly but steadily. Geological records show that extinction was layered. Different species disappeared at different times. Some vanished in one region while others survived elsewhere. There was no final roar of doom, only absence creeping slowly across continents. The earth shifted, and life struggled to follow. Even the largest giants, the sauropods, eventually felt the scarcity. Their enormous bodies needed enormous amounts of food. As forests shrank, they had to wander further, walking longer distances with less to eat. Their steps became more deliberate, more cautious. Their strength alone could not stop the fading abundance. The small, gentle herbivores faced a similar reality. Young dinosaurs did not survive as well. Their bodies weakened without enough nutrition. Parents continued to move and feed, but eventually their numbers declined. The herd grew thinner each year until it finally vanished. Predators followed the herbivores into decline. There was still hunting, still movement, but every hunt required more energy than it returned. Carnivores grew slower and weaker. Eventually, even the most adaptable hunters could not survive the slow scarcity. This long fade was not dramatic, but it was complete. The earth that once hosted forests, rivers, and endless herds of dinosaurs became quieter. Less life roamed the land. Fossils show fewer bones, smaller tracks, and thinner layers of remains. The planet was still alive, but life was no longer as it had been. Extinction did not happen in one day. It did not happen in one year. It was the result of gradual change. Climate shifts, food shortages, and landscapes transforming beyond what dinosaurs could endure. They lived until they could no longer. They fed until plants were gone. They moved until paths ran dry. Then they disappeared quietly. The world they left behind was different but still alive. New creatures, smaller and more adaptable, began to fill the spaces. Mammals, birds, and insects slowly took over areas that had once been dominated by giants. The Earth moved on, as it always has, leaving traces of the giants only in stone and imagination. This quiet ending teaches a different lesson than sudden catastrophe. Extinction is not always a dramatic event. Sometimes it is slow. Sometimes it is patient. Life thins gradually until it cannot continue. The world does not stop. Life simply changes. The dinosaurs were gone, but they had lived fully. Millions of years of movement, feeding, reproduction, and care had passed before the slow fade took them. Their existence shaped the land. Their footprints, fossils, and remains tell a story of endurance, not panic. Even in decline, they were steady. They adapted as much as they could. They wandered, grazed, and hunted carefully. The end was quiet, but their lives were long. They were present in their world until the world no longer could support them. We imagine extinction as sudden as an impact or a roar, but for dinosaurs it was different. They experienced the slow pressure of change, learning, adapting, struggling, and finally disappearing. Life continued quietly around them. Forests grew, rivers shifted, new species appeared. The planet went on as it always has. The Earth after the dinosaurs felt calmer but emptier. The silence was noticeable. The absence of giants marked the land, but not in terror. Just in quiet, empty spaces. Tracks stopped appearing. Fossils became rarer. The rhythm of life had shifted. And in that silence, the next chapter of life began. Small mammals, birds, and new reptiles took the spaces left behind. They explored, moved, and adapted slowly, just as the dinosaurs had done millions of years before. Life continued, patient and steady, in the shadow of giants who had lived and faded without drama. Extinction did not happen in one day. It stretched over thousands of years. It was patience, time, and change working together. And though the dinosaurs are gone, their calm presence, their slow decline, and their quiet rule remain a memory preserved in stone. The Earth continued. Life continued. And the story of the dinosaurs reminds us that even the greatest rulers of a world can vanish slowly, leaving only traces, echoes, and quiet lessons about survival, adaptation, and the passage of time. After the dinosaurs were gone, the Earth changed again. Forests and plains stretched across continents. Then, over millions of years, the world cooled. Ice crept across land. Mountains wore snow caps. Rivers froze in winter. And in this cold world, new giants appeared, animals built for ice and snow. Mammoths were among the most famous. They were enormous, with long, curved tusks and thick, woolly coats. Their fur kept them warm when snow blew across frozen plains. Underneath, fat layers protected their bodies from the biting cold. They moved slowly, steadily, across vast lands searching for grass, shrubs, and plants hidden under snow. Every step was careful. Every movement conserved energy. Life in the ice required patience. Woolly rhinos lived alongside mammoths. Their bodies were heavy, their heads broad and strong. Thick horns curved from their faces, not for attack, but perhaps for moving snow to find food or defending against occasional predators. Their fur was dense and shaggy. Their legs were short and sturdy, built to cross frozen terrain without slipping. They grazed quietly, alone or in small groups, leaving tracks in snow that could freeze and last for thousands of years. Giant deer with enormous antlers roamed icy forests and tundras. Their antlers were not just weapons but tools, perhaps for sweeping snow or for display in mating rituals. They moved with care, avoiding weak ice or deep snowdrifts. Every motion was deliberate. Even in large herds, movement was synchronized, calm, almost rhythmic, like a slow dance across the frozen land. These Ice Age animals were adapted to survive where heat was rare. Their bodies were built for endurance, not speed. Thick fur, heavy bones, wide feet, and slow metabolism allowed them to conserve energy. They did not rush. The world was harsh, but it rewarded those who moved patiently, who fed calmly, who endured without panic. The cold shaped behavior as much as anatomy. Mammoths, for example, traveled in herds. They protected young and weak members from harsh winds and snow. Their long tusks could move branches, clear paths, or push through snowdrifts. The herd moved slowly, with no sudden changes, each animal aware of the others. The world demanded cooperation and patience. Food was always a challenge. Ice-covered grasses. Plants were buried under frost. Mammoths used tusks to dig through snow. Woolly rhinos scraped frozen earth for shrubs. Giant deer searched for moss and low plants beneath snow-covered branches. Each meal required time and care. Hunger was constant, but panic was useless. The environment was calm yet deadly. Blizzards could arrive without warning. Ice could crack under weight. Yet these animals moved with awareness, not fear. They learned the rhythm of the seasons, the patterns of snow, and the movement of frozen rivers. Every day demanded attention, but life remained deliberate. Predators existed, like large cats and wolves, but the giant's size and group behavior often protected them. Mammoths in herds could form circles around calves. Woolly rhinos could stand firm against smaller threats. Even giant deer had senses and speed suited for cold forests. Life on ice required calm strategy, not recklessness. Their coats were remarkable, thick wool for warmth, hairs long and insulating, undercoats soft to trap heat. Some animals had darker fur on their backs to absorb sunlight. Others had lighter shades for camouflage in snow. Every adaptation reflected patient evolution, building animals that could survive where most would freeze. Ice Age animals moved differently from creatures in warmer climates. Their steps were heavier, slower, and careful to conserve energy. Herds moved together, single file across plains. Predators tracked quietly. Plants bent under their weight, leaving impressions that became frozen records of life long ago. The land itself remembered their passage. Life in the cold demanded endurance. Seasons lasted longer. Winters were harsh. Summers brief. Animals survived by eating, resting, and reproducing carefully. Young had to learn patience immediately. They copied elders' movements, understanding how to find food, conserve energy, and avoid danger. Even rivers and lakes shaped life. Frozen water was both a barrier and a path. Crossing ice required steady weight distribution. Falling could mean death in freezing water. Mammoths and rhinos learned to test ice, step carefully, and wait for weaker snow to harden. Movement itself was survival. Some of these animals lived tens of thousands of years, adapting slowly as the ice advanced and retreated. Others appeared briefly and vanished with warming periods. The earth itself was alive in cycles, and the giants had to move with the rhythm of glaciers, snow, and ice sheets. The calm of these giants is striking. Imagine a woolly mammoth grazing alone in a snow-covered plain. Mist rises from frozen soil. Wind whistles softly through ice crystals. The animal lifts its head slowly, listening, sensing, moving, every action measured, every breath visible in the cold air. Life continues quietly without rush. Extinction for these animals was, again, not sudden. Climate warmed gradually, ice melted, forests grew where tundra had dominated, humans arrived hunting carefully, food sources shifted. Slowly, populations declined. Herds grew smaller, young were fewer, adults grew weaker, life thinned. The giants of ice faded. Mammoths, rhinos, and giant deer disappeared not in disaster but in a long, quiet fade. The cold world they were built for vanished. And with it, animals perfectly adapted to snow, and ice went with patience and grace, leaving the land to new species that thrived in warmer climates. Yet their memory remains. Fossils, frozen remains, tracks in stone and ice, all whisper of a world dominated by calm, patient giants. Animals that moved slowly, survived harsh conditions, and shaped the land with deliberate care. They remind us that life can endure extreme conditions not with chaos, but with steady patience. And as we imagine these ice age animals moving across frozen plains, grazing calmly, walking in herds, and surviving the harshest winters, we see a world that was quiet, deliberate, and entirely extraordinary. A world that no longer exists but lives in memory and stone. These animals were built for a world that vanished. They thrived for thousands of generations. They endured wind, snow, and ice with patience. And when the ice melted and the world changed, they faded quietly, leaving only traces and memories of a calm, frozen past. After the Ice Age, the world changed again. Humans began to spread across continents. Animals had lived for millions of years without knowing these strange, clever creatures. Many giants, used to calm and safe lives, did not sense danger from humans. They trusted the world, and that trust would become a quiet vulnerability. Giant sloths moved slowly through forests and grasslands. Their long claws helped them pull down branches and reach leaves. They lived high in trees or on the ground, feeding peacefully. They had no predators that could match their size for most of their lives. Every movement was deliberate. Every day was calm. But humans changed everything. Dodos lived on islands far from the mainland. For millions of years they had no predators. They wandered forests, fed on fruits and seeds, and nested on the ground without fear. They did not fly. They did not hide. Their lives were slow, peaceful, and unhurried. Trusting the world had been safe for them for countless generations. Saber-tooths, the fierce hunters of the past, had thrived for thousands of years in cold plains and forests. They were powerful predators, but they had never encountered humans until late in their existence. Some were cautious. Others moved through the land boldly, unaware of the new intelligence arriving on the continents. Humans observed. They hunted with tools and strategies that animals could not understand. The giants had never learned to fear creatures like these. Their survival had depended on calm awareness, patience, and size. They had no reason to expect a small, clever opponent that could change the world so quickly. Giant sloths, for example, moved carefully through forests. Their large bodies crushed undergrowth, leaving paths through ferns and shrubs. Humans, seeing them, realized they were slow, defenseless in ways the sloths had never imagined. They were captured or killed easily. Trust became vulnerability. The world they had relied on for protection now turned quietly against them. Dodos wandered their islands freely. They nested on the ground. They had no fear of humans stepping onto their beaches. Birds that had survived storms, predators, and harsh seasons for millennia suddenly found themselves exposed. Their peace and trust, once a strength, made them easy targets, food for new arrivals. Even saber-tooths faced challenges. Humans were not fast enough to outrun them, nor small enough to be ignored, but clever. Humans worked together. using traps and fire, shaping landscapes, and chasing prey in ways that had never existed before. Animals that had ruled ecosystems for thousands of years could not comprehend these new hunters. Their confidence, their experience, their calm awareness, all failed against strategy and cunning. Many of these animals had thrived because they did not waste energy on unnecessary fear. Their lives were deliberate. Slow steps, careful grazing, measured movements. They were patient, enduring. But human arrival was a new force. They were patient, deliberate, and clever. The giants' calm did not protect them from intelligence they could not sense. Giant sloths fell first in some regions. Humans cut down forests, hunted them for food, or captured them easily. Their size no longer deterred danger. Their patience no longer helped them escape. They were vulnerable because they had never known fear of creatures like humans. Dodos disappeared even more quietly. No one remembers the first bird to vanish. No roar or panic. Just a small population shrinking as humans hunted, introduced rats, and changed their forests. The calm trust that had allowed them to live peacefully on their islands for thousands of generations became their undoing. Saber-tooths lasted longer in some regions, but even they could not survive forever. They faced not only humans but also changing climates and shrinking prey. Their hunting methods were slow and methodical, suitable for large herbivores but not adaptable to sudden changes. They died quietly, over generations, leaving bones and fossils as reminders of their existence. The pattern repeated across continents. Large mammals, birds, and even some smaller animals, trusting the world they knew, suddenly faced beings they could not predict. Humans were patient, clever, and fast learners. Giants that had once ruled through size, calmness, and awareness found themselves at risk. Extinction in these cases was not immediate. It was slow, often taking centuries. Populations dwindled quietly. Young animals did not survive. Herds became smaller. Islands lost their birds. Forests lost their gentle giants. The world changed without spectacle, leaving only emptiness where calm rulers once existed. These animals had never evolved fear of humans. They had evolved to survive storms, predators, ice, and scarcity. But the sudden appearance of intelligent hunters shifted the balance. Size, calmness, and patience were no longer enough. They could not adapt fast enough. They could not recognize the threat until it was too late. Imagine a giant sloth moving slowly through a forest, unaware of humans nearby. Every step is careful, every reach measured. It has survived ice, predators, and storms for thousands of years. But now the quiet forest is no longer safe. A trap, a spear, or fire changes everything. Trust becomes vulnerability. A dodo pecks at seeds on the forest floor. The wind rustles leaves. It has no fear because it has no reason to. Generations have passed with no danger. Then humans arrive. The bird's calm confidence allows hunters to approach easily. Life ends not in drama but in quiet, sudden removal from the world. Even saber-tooths, the hunters themselves, could not always adapt. They were powerful, but their prey was disappearing. Humans hunted with tactics they did not understand. The ecosystems changed too quickly. The animals' trust in the world, in their ability to survive, could not match the speed of change. The lesson is clear. Animals that trusted the world too much, that relied on calmness, patience, or size alone, became vulnerable when a new force entered. Extinction was not dramatic. It was slow. It was quiet. It took advantage of habits, of trust, of the way life had moved for thousands of generations. And yet, these animals were remarkable. They had thrived peacefully for millions of years. Giant sloths, dodos, saber-tooths, all creatures adapted perfectly to their worlds. They lived fully, moving carefully, feeding patiently, reproducing steadily. They knew calm, they knew patience, they knew survival in harmony with their environment. Humans did not appear in their history until the end, and in that short time, the giants' world changed. Their calm, deliberate movements were no longer enough to survive. Their trust, once a strength, became the reason they could not endure. The story of these animals is quiet but powerful. It reminds us that life is fragile, even for giants. That trust can be dangerous when the world changes. That patience and calm are strengths, but not always enough against intelligence or sudden change. And as we imagine these animals, sloths moving slowly through forests, dodos wandering islands, saber-tooths stalking in icy plains, we see not failure but a kind of innocence. They did not know what humans were. They lived as they had always lived, and their calm, trusting lives left a gentle imprint on the earth, even as they vanished quietly into history. After generations of life, after species thrived for thousands or millions of years, there comes a moment few ever notice. The world goes on, but a species has almost vanished. Only a few individuals remain, maybe one, maybe two, and eventually even these disappear. Extinction often ends quietly with one animal. Imagine a forest, silent and still. The wind moves through bare branches. A single giant sloth shuffles along, its movements slower than usual. Its companions are gone. Its herd has vanished over time, hunted or starved. The forest is calm, almost peaceful, but the sloth is alone. Each step is heavy. Each pause is uncertain. Its world is almost empty. Or picture a small island. The dodo, once numerous, wanders alone. The trees provide some food, but no companions are nearby. The bird searches for seeds, unaware that it is the last of its kind. Its feathers catch sunlight. Its movements are slow. It does not know extinction is near. No other dodos are left to call or warn it. No flock to guide its way. Even predators face lonely ends. A saber-tooth prowls a quiet valley where prey has become scarce. Its family is gone. Its hunting grounds have changed. Each hunt is harder. Each night is colder. The once powerful hunter moves with caution, survival instinct strong, but it cannot restore what has been lost. Soon, it too will disappear. The last individuals of any species live without witnesses. The world continues around them. Rivers flow, trees sway, other animals survive. But the last of a species moves through silence. No others are there to greet them, to compete with them, or to follow them. Their lives end in quiet solitude. Some of these final animals live in small, isolated pockets, maybe a single cave, a remote island, or a hidden forest. For centuries, humans might never see them. For decades, they might survive unnoticed. But time is relentless. Sooner or later, the last one dies, leaving no evidence of life that once thrived. Sometimes the last animals are trapped by humans or changing climates. Forests shrink, ice melts, islands flood, and the creatures that survive are too few to reproduce. Their genes disappear. Their kind vanishes. The last individual is a reminder that life can end quietly, without drama, without spectacle. There is a strange beauty in this silence. These last animals lived long enough to experience most of what their species ever did. They knew forests, rivers, ice, and plains. They moved slowly and deliberately. They adapted as best as they could. And yet the world changed beyond their ability to survive. The extinction of the last individual is not violent. It is simple. The animal eats, sleeps, moves, and eventually stops. There is no crowd to mourn, no companions to notice, no drama. Just a calm, final moment. The species ends as quietly as it lived. Sometimes the last individual is young, full of potential. Sometimes it is old, weary from years of struggle. Each has lived under conditions that shaped them. Each has survived challenges that tested their species for generations. But survival cannot continue without companions. Life depends on connection, on community, on numbers. Fossils and records tell us about these final individuals only indirectly. A lone bone, a last footprint, or an observation in a journal may hint that one animal remained long after its kind seemed gone. And sometimes we never know. Extinction can happen without leaving a single clue. Even the great giants of the past ended this way. Mammoths in frozen tundras, woolly rhinos grazing quietly, giant sloths moving slowly, dodos wandering islands, saber-toothed stalking forests. Each had a last individual moving through a world they had once dominated, unaware that they were the final chapter. There is a quiet tragedy in this. Loneliness, not violence, marks the end. No roar, no dramatic struggle, just the calm, steady passage of life to a stop. A forest continues, ice melts, other animals survive. But the last of its kind ceases to exist, leaving the world just slightly emptier. Sometimes the last individuals teach us lessons. They show how fragile life can be. They show how slow changes, climate, humans, competition, can quietly remove giants and small creatures alike. They remind us that survival is never guaranteed, no matter how long a species has endured. Imagine the final woolly mammoth trudging across a snow-covered plain. It moves carefully, testing ice and snow. Food is scarce. The herd is gone. Its large body endures but slowly weakens. Every step is deliberate. Every pause is a small decision. And then one day it stops forever. No one sees it. No one notices. The species is gone. Or the last dodo pecking at the ground in an island forest. Its feathers shine in sunlight. It calls softly, but no other birds answer. The forest is calm. Its food is sparse. The bird moves slowly, carefully, unaware that it is the final member of a species that once thrived in abundance. And then it disappears, leaving no trace. Even predators like the last saber-tooth ended quietly. Hunger and age finally overcame strength. Its movement slowed. Its hunting was less successful. And when it died, no one watched. Its species had dwindled over centuries, and its final moments were just one more day in the quiet forest. The last individuals remind us that extinction is not always sudden. It is patient. It works quietly over generations. One by one, a species disappears until only one remains. And when that one is gone, the species is gone forever. The world continues around the loss, but the loss itself is invisible except in memory, in fossils, or in imagination. And yet there is beauty in imagining these last animals. They lived full lives. They adapted, survived, and endured as long as possible. They moved carefully, ate slowly, reproduced when they could. Their lives were deliberate and measured until the very end. Extinction often ends with one animal, a silent witness to the end of a story that lasted millions of years. A final movement through a world that has already changed. A quiet conclusion to a chapter of life that will never exist again. And as we picture these last individuals, alone in forests, on islands, or across frozen plains, we can feel the calm, patient rhythm of life that continued until the very last moment. They remind us that even the greatest, strongest, or most enduring species can end quietly, leaving the world only slightly emptier, yet still moving forward. After the last of the giants, the mammoths, the sloths, the dodos, and the saber-tooths disappeared, the world continued to change. Forests grew differently. Rivers carved new paths. Grasslands expanded. The animals that remained moved into spaces left empty by extinct species. Life never stops, it only replaces. The earth after extinction was quieter at first. Places that had been full of herds or flocks were suddenly emptier. Trees grew taller without being grazed constantly. Rivers ran freely without large animals crossing all the time. Yet the silence did not last. Nature always finds a way to fill gaps. New species emerged. Small mammals grew larger. Birds spread into new habitats. Insects multiplied. Every empty space became a chance for life to explore. Small creatures took over first. Rodents, rabbits, and small predators multiplied quickly. Their numbers grew, and they explored territories once dominated by giants. They ate seeds, insects, and young plants, shaping forests and grasslands in ways they never had before. The world was reorganizing itself, quietly and carefully, like a slow puzzle completing. Larger mammals began to appear as well. Creatures that could take advantage of empty spaces grew. Some became browsers, eating shrubs and young trees. Others became grazers, eating grasses on plains that were no longer trampled by mammoths. They moved with calm efficiency, filling roles left by creatures that had ruled before. Life was patient, observing the gaps and slowly taking over. Birds expanded into many new areas. Islands once home to dodos saw new arrivals, some from continents, some evolving independently. They occupied trees, forests, and plains. Their colors, calls, and habits changed the landscapes. Flight allowed them to reach spaces mammals could not. Life filled every niche available slowly, without hurry. Predators adjusted as well. With new herbivores appearing, carnivores adapted. Some became fast hunters, chasing prey across plains. Others became ambush predators, moving quietly through forests. Life was balanced again, but in a different rhythm than before. The giants were gone, but the land was still full of movement, sound, and survival. The soil itself remembered the past. Old footprints, burrows, and fossils created new environments. Nutrients left by extinct animals enriched the land. Plants that had been eaten extensively began to grow more abundantly. Streams carved by mammoth herds became habitats for fish and amphibians. Life built on the legacy of those who had vanished. Even climates continued to change. Ice melted from glaciers, rivers swelled, and forests shifted. New ecosystems formed. Some regions became deserts, others wetlands. Animals adapted slowly, moving to suitable lands. Life was resilient, filling the world patiently, one generation at a time. Some species evolved rapidly. The disappearance of large herbivores allowed smaller ones to expand in size. Birds lost to islands adapted to new predators or food sources. Small mammals developed new behaviors to exploit resources. Extinction was not an end. It was a transition. The world reshaped itself, quietly and deliberately. Humans began to spread more widely during these transitions. They became another factor in shaping the world. Some species thrived alongside humans. Others vanished under hunting and land changes. Yet life continued. Nature adapted to every new change, finding balance in ways that were subtle and patient. Plants also evolved to match new animals. Trees grew taller or spread wider. Grasses expanded across plains. Flowers multiplied, feeding insects and birds. Every change in animals caused a ripple in plants, and every change in plants shaped the next generation of animals. The earth was alive in a new rhythm, always moving forward. Even places that had been dominated by extinct giants slowly regained life. Forests once trampled by mammoths and rhinos returned to calm growth. Rivers filled with fish and amphibians. Birds nested in trees once stripped bare. Insects crawled through soil once compacted by large feet. Life reused every space, every resource, every opportunity left behind. Extinction created openings, but it also taught resilience. Life learned to adapt to empty spaces and changing climates. New species were patient. They grew slowly. They spread carefully. They learned from the gaps left by giants and the silent endings of the last individuals. Fossils remind us of the past, but the living world shows continuity. The giants may be gone, but the earth continues to teem with life. Mammals, birds, insects, and plants fill every niche. Streams and rivers continue their paths. Mountains erode slowly. Forests grow and die in cycles. Life never stops, it only changes form. Even today, the land carries traces of the giants. Paths in forests follow old herd movements. Soil enriched by extinct animals supports forests and grasslands. Some plants evolved with large herbivores and continue to thrive in their absence. Life builds on what came before, quietly and endlessly. The story of extinction is not just loss, it is transformation. Empty spaces invite new life. Every ending is a beginning. Animals, plants, and ecosystems respond to changes slowly, filling gaps with patience and care. The world remains full, moving forward in endless rhythm. And as we imagine the Earth after the giants, after mammoths, dodos, and saber-tooths have disappeared, we see a quiet beauty. Life continues, calm and deliberate. Species move carefully, adapt steadily, and explore every opportunity. The planet hums with quiet activity. Nature replaces what is gone. Extinction is not final, it is a shift. A chapter ends, but the story continues. New animals rise, empty spaces are filled. Forests, rivers, and plains evolve with each passing generation. Life adapts, survives, and thrives. The giants of the past are gone, but their absence allows new forms of life to exist, quietly, steadily, endlessly. And in this way, the earth is never empty. It only transforms. The calm steps of past giants are replaced by the careful movements of new species. The silence of extinction gives way to subtle sounds of life. Rustling leaves, flowing water, bird calls, and the movement of small animals across forests and plains. Life never stops. It only replaces. The giants may be gone, but the world they once ruled continues to thrive in new forms. Every forest, every river, every grassland carries the memory of the past and the promise of what is yet to come. Extinction is not an ending. It is a quiet transition, and the story of life marches forward, patient, mysterious, and eternal.